Power flash.
September 2025, what should have been the quiet end of Arizona's monsoon season turned into one of the worst floods the state has faced in decades. The usually dry desert valleys around Globe, Miami, and Claypool in Gila County were swallowed up by sudden walls of water after back-to-back storms dumped over 2 inches of rain in just a few hours. In an instant, streets became rivers. Historic downtown shops were torn apart. Families had to leave everything behind, escaping with only what they could carry. U.S. Highway 60, a critical route through central Arizona, was completely shut down as raging floodwaters buried cars, propane tanks, and piles of debris. At least 3 people lost their lives, entire neighborhoods were left in the dark without power, and whole communities were brought to a standstill. This wasn't just another storm, it was a fight for survival. This is the story of how Arizona's desert heartland endured a once-in-a-generation flood. The disaster hit with shocking speed. On Thursday evening, powerful storms formed over the mountains east of Globe and unleashed torrents of rain. In less than an hour and a half, more than 2 inches poured down, an extreme amount for this desert landscape. Storm drains couldn't keep up. By midnight, water was surging through neighborhoods, climbing above car bumpers, and rushing into homes. Survivors said it sounded like a freight train tearing through the valley. Streets became violent rivers, carrying away cars, dumpsters, and even propane tanks. One resident described watching tanks float by, releasing gas into the air, comparing it to bombs drifting downstream. In downtown Globe, the Wild Horses Saloon had its entire wall ripped away by the sudden force of the water. Businesses, schools, and even the local Walmart were buried in thick mud. Families ran upstairs or climbed onto rooftops, clutching children and pets, waving frantically for rescue as the current ripped away everything they owned. By sunrise, U.S. Highway 60 had collapsed in sections, forcing a total shutdown in both directions. Emergency officials warned that conditions were still dangerous and begged residents to stay off the roads. And for Gila County, this was just the beginning. As the sun came up, the true scale of the disaster finally hit. At least 3 lives were lost, and rescue crews were still out searching flooded ravines and waterways for the missing. Families trapped on rooftops and upper floors waved desperately for help as boats and helicopters battled through debris-filled waters to reach them. One of the most dangerous situations came from nearly 1,000 propane tanks swept away by the flood. Many were leaking, gas bubbling and hissing in the water, like time bombs waiting to go off. Officials called it a nightmare on top of an already devastating flood, warning residents to leave immediately if they noticed the smell of gas. Across the area, destruction was everywhere. Streets were buried under heavy mud, cars were stacked like toy models against bridges, and historic downtown blocks were torn apart. The once lively Wild Horses Saloon collapsed into rubble.
Nangukaw ng mga sakyanan, anong pang-display diri sa atbang. Nangukaw ng mga sakyanan, anong pang-display diri sa atbang. Bye-bye.
Its brick walls spilling across the road. On Highway 60, rescuers discovered half-submerged vehicles pinned between logs and broken propane tanks. The highway stayed completely closed, cutting off one of the main routes through central Arizona. With power lines down and cell service failing, staying connected became almost impossible. The message was clear. This wasn't just another flood. This was a disaster unlike anything people here had ever seen. By Friday afternoon, Gila County was in full crisis mode. The mayor of Globe declared a state of emergency, which opened the door for state and federal assistance. More than 300 emergency workers, including firefighters, sheriff's deputies, and DPS helicopters, were sent to help with rescues and recovery. Shelters popped up in schools, churches, and community centers, giving displaced families a place to stay. Many arrived soaked, exhausted, and carrying only small bags of what they managed to save. Volunteers stepped in quickly, handing out water, blankets, and hot meals. While hospitals prepared for an influx of patients suffering from cold, injuries, and shock. Cleanup crews worked around the clock, clearing away debris and pumping water out of flooded schools and businesses. At Miami High School, the gym, usually filled with cheering students, had been turned into an emergency shelter lined with cots and sandbags. Teachers, parents, and volunteers stood side by side, handing out supplies and comforting kids who were scared and exhausted. But the danger wasn't over. Officials warned that more rain was on the way, and with the ground already soaked, the chances of landslides and flash floods were even higher. Residents were told to stock up on sandbags, avoid unnecessary travel, and pay close attention to emergency alerts. One thing was certain, people in Globe and Miami would need every ounce of strength and resilience to get through the days ahead. By Saturday morning, the flooding in Globe, Arizona had made national headlines. Images of cars being swept away like toys, families stranded on rooftops, and propane tanks exploding downstream were plastered across TV screens and social media feeds. News outlets compared the devastation to past disasters like Hurricane Harvey's floods and Louisiana's 2016 storm, calling it one of the worst inland flooding events in Arizona's history. Clips of propane tanks hissing and bursting into flames spread quickly online, shocking viewers across the country. Federal agencies began paying close attention. The National Guard was put on standby, and FEMA teams arrived to assess whether the floods would qualify for a major disaster declaration. In Washington, lawmakers pointed to the Arizona floods as yet another example of extreme weather linked to climate change. Many pushed for urgent investments in stronger, more resilient infrastructure. But for the people living through it, the crisis was personal. We've lost our homes, our cars, and so many memories, but we haven't lost hope, one teacher told reporters while standing outside a mud-filled classroom. Across Globe and Miami, survivors shared the same message. They needed help. Not weeks later, not someday, but now. This wasn't just a story about one small community in Arizona. It became a wake-up call for the entire country, a reminder that even in the desert, no place is truly safe from the threat of extreme flooding. Oh, there goes another power flash. As the floodwaters slowly pulled back, the true extent of the damage became clear. Early estimates suggested losses in the tens of millions of dollars, with destruction ranging from collapsed highways to small businesses wiped out overnight. The closure of US Highway 60, normally a lifeline for travel and shipping, brought everything to a standstill. Truck deliveries were stalled, local supply chains broke down, and grocery stores quickly ran short on essentials. Nearby gas stations saw long lines as fuel deliveries lagged behind. For many families, the disaster hit even closer to home. Houses were gutted, cars ruined, and personal belongings vanished in minutes. Community landmarks like Walmart, Miami High School, and several downtown businesses were left crippled by the flooding. Small business owners stood in the muck, staring at shelves coated in mud and waterlogged registers. One shopkeeper summed it up, "It's not just money. This was our life's work, gone in one night." Officials warned that repairs to the power grid could take weeks. Water treatment plants were offline, sparking fears of contamination and disease. Insurance agents swarmed the region, but many residents admitted they had no flood coverage, common in desert areas where flooding rarely crosses anyone's mind. The message was clear: recovery wouldn't happen overnight. For the towns of Globe and Miami, rebuilding could take months, maybe even years. Even in the middle of devastation, the people of Globe and Miami proved that no flood could wash away their determination. Neighbors stepped up for each other, forming human chains to pull the stranded to safety. Volunteers passed out sandbags, food, and blankets, while local churches opened their doors to give families a safe place to stay. Teachers rolled up their sleeves, clearing mud from classrooms so kids could get back to learning and regain a sense of normal life. First responders, tired but unshaken, worked non-stop, refusing to rest until every last person was found. But this story is bigger than survival. It's a warning. Extreme weather is hitting harder, faster, and closer to home than ever before, and America has to be ready. The tragedy in Globe wasn't just a local disaster, it was a glimpse into our future. If we fail to prepare, we're only making that future arrive faster. Floodwaters in Arizona's desert may eventually fade, but the damage they left behind, on homes, schools, and memories, will last for years. This wasn't just about one community. It was a wake-up call for the entire country, showing that no region is safe from the growing threat of extreme weather. From the Gulf Coast to the Midwest and now into the desert Southwest, the danger zones are spreading. Yet, even in destruction, one truth shines through: human resilience. The people of Globe and Miami showed us that when the storm hits, communities rise stronger. They remind us that while we can't stop nature's fury, unity and preparedness can save lives. Now it's on us, as viewers, neighbors, and citizens, to carry their story forward. Support relief efforts. Stay prepared. Share this message. And if you believe stories like this matter, don't forget to like, subscribe, and spread the word. Together, we can raise awareness, build resilience, and make sure no community ever faces the storm alone.